We've been at our homestead for about 3 years now, and it's kind of crazy to think about how far we've come in the 3 years that we've been here and just how much we've learned. And I was thinking the other day, is there anything we would change? Or if we had to go back and start over, what would that look like? So today we're going to talk about if we had to start from scratch, here's what we would do if we were starting out on a new homestead. So obviously this idea is going to depend on where you're at, where you're living, what your property looks like, etc. We're going to use this property, which is just about 10 acres, and I'm going to assume that there was nothing here but a house and a garage. So with that, here's what we would do. So to start this off, I'm probably going to disappoint some people, but if we had to start from scratch, the very first thing I would do would be to do nothing. And what I mean by that is I would take at least the first month to get settled in, to sit down, to plan, to think, okay, what do we want to get out of this homesteading experience? What do we want our place, our property to look like? And how is it going to benefit us? So the first thing I would do for the first at least month or so would just be to plan, prioritize, think about what you actually want to experience, what you want to receive from the land. And I know that's the boring answer, but I think that's the right answer. And the reason I think that's the right answer is that's exactly what we didn't do. When we moved here, we did everything in the first month or so. We updated our bedrooms. We bought a dog and chickens and ducks within the first 5 days of being here. We renovated part of our garage and added electricity. We did some exterior work on the house. We did do some planning and started to plan out our garden, but we really dove head first. And I think if I were to go back, I would have spent more time really thinking and prioritizing what do we want to get from this experience that we're having. And there's a couple reasons for that. The first is, if you can avoid mistakes, try and avoid mistakes. And usually mistakes can be avoided with planning and with preparation. And now you're not going to avoid every mistake. You're going to have some failures. We absolutely did along the way. All right, that didn't work. And that's part of the learning experience for sure. But if there is a little bit of time to prepare, a little bit of time to learn, to research, that goes a long way. And the second reason is things cost money. In full transparency, we had a little bit of money to spend on some projects to get going, like the renovations we did with our house, like the garden. But once that money was burnt through, we had to think, we're like, okay, now we have to pace ourselves. We can't just throw money at these projects anymore. And I think if I were to go back and we were to redo it, I would say starting small, mastering 1 or 2 projects at a time. That way it doesn't lead to burnout, doesn't lead to frustration, doesn't lead to unfinished projects. Because that was our Achilles heel when we started, is we had 10 to 15 different projects going at once, and 75% of them made it to about 90% completion, and then they sat for a while until we got around to them. So start small, master 1 or 2 things, plan, prepare, attack, and then you'll be on your way if you're starting from scratch. So once we have a plan in place, the next thing that what we would have done is to really attack and really start working on our food systems. And the one that I'm going to focus on right now is the food that you can grow, not necessarily raise. And what we ended up doing is building this garden. And it was great. It was an awesome project. We loved it. But what we realized is that we actually probably pinned ourselves back into a corner with this garden because we've already outgrown it. We've had to expand out. And I know this is space prohibited, right? It depends on how much space you are. And there's one thing we talk a lot about on this channel is there's a ton you can do with little amount of space. But we are fortunate to have the space. And so what I would have done was planned food systems for the future, knowing that we weren't going to get to them all right away. But having a bigger garden, having a space dedicated to our fruit trees and our fruit bushes, and really trying to see the bigger picture of how this property was going to be developed throughout the coming years. And one thing that we didn't do very well is we didn't have a ton of knowledge going into it. What's great about that is you can start learning from anywhere, regardless of where you're at. Even if you don't have land to do this, or you're living in a New York City apartment, you can learn and you can research and you can figure out what the right way to do things is and what the wrong way is to do things. For example, when we moved out here, we planted fruit trees and berry bushes, which is great. You want to get those in the ground right away as soon as you can, because it takes a few years for them to start producing. However, we just threw them in the ground. We had no idea how to grow these things. We didn't really do enough research. We did some, but not enough, clearly, because the blueberry bushes died almost immediately. Like 3 weeks after we planted them, they were dead and overgrown, and we didn't realize that blueberries need acidic soil. Same with the fruit trees that we planted. We planted some apples and pears, peach trees, and a couple of them are still hanging on, survival of the fittest, but we didn't know things like pruning. We didn't know things like soil conditions. We didn't even know when the best time of the year to plant them was, which is usually in the spring. We planted them in the heat of July when it's hot, and they're gonna die because there's not enough moisture in the air and watering them enough. So there's things like that where if we would have had a better base of knowledge going into it, we would have saved ourselves a lot of frustration and failure. So we got some of our perennial fruit trees and bushes in the ground, and we did the research and we know exactly how to treat them, how to raise them. They're growing beautifully. Now we're gonna move on to our annual garden, the garden that we're in here right now. The mistake that we made is we did a lot of the fun, kind of funky vegetables to start. Things that we had never tried before, which experimenting is always a good thing, but we would have probably gone back. We would have focused more on the hardy vegetables and the hardy starches, like the things like potatoes and squashes and onions, the things that you can really make a meal out of. We didn't do that our first year. I don't think we even grew potatoes our first year, which is like, that's like the staple kind of sustenance crop when you think about really hardy vegetables. But we did a lot of, like I said, a lot of the funky things. We did, like, there was a black tomato, and we did turnips and beets. We don't like those. We knew we didn't like those, but we grew them anyways because we thought that's what you're supposed to do. So having a better plan of what we actually like to eat, and really trying to set yourself up with enough produce, growing enough food based off of what your goals are. Our goals are to be, in the summertime, like 75% or so self-sufficient with our, like, the foods that we can grow. And that first year we definitely were way off because we didn't know better. We didn't have an idea of what we needed to grow to reach that goal. So thinking through your food systems, thinking what you want to eat, how much you need, that's where our focus would have been that first year starting a new homestead. So when I think people think of homesteading, I think that dream or vision usually includes animals. It certainly did for us. When we were preparing to make this move out here, we really were thinking, okay, we're gonna start to, we're gonna get the chickens, we're gonna get ducks, we're gonna get goats, sheep, maybe even a dairy cow if we're feeling frisky, right? We really thought we were going to have this huge farm with all the animals and it was gonna be great. And then reality set in is, oh, animals cost a lot of money. Animals require a lot of things in terms of taking care of them, but also in terms of infrastructure. They need fencing, they need shelter, they need hay bins for bigger animals, things like that. And so when the reality set in and we ended up getting chickens and ducks right away, we realized, okay, some of these bigger animals are gonna require a lot. And I'm very, very glad we made the decision to hold off because we were this close to getting goats. And I think that would have really put a sour taste in our mouth because we were way over our heads with the projects and the things that we had going on that first year. And there's 2 points I wanna make on this. The first is, going back to the first point, What are your priorities when it comes to the food? We have come to a spot now where I don't think we'll get another animal unless we can see how it benefits us. And if you want animals just for pleasure and just to have them, that's totally fine. That makes complete sense. You know, everyone has pets. We're at a point now though where we have seen the responsibility required to take care of the animals that we have, and any animals that we would add, we realize there's going to be a much higher threshold of responsibility. And so we want to see and make sure that we're receiving something in return. That's just our plan, and that is just the only way that animals are going to fit in with our goals. So for example, our chickens, you know, we built them this Taj Mahal of chicken coops, and they give us eggs, they give us fertilizers, they give us pest control. They do give us entertainment. They're funny to watch, especially the ducks too. The ducks are hilarious. But we can see how they're actually serving us. Our cats, well, cat now, we had multiple cats, we only have one cat now. They are our pest control. Every morning we have mice that our cat gets, and we know that that's one less mouse that's gonna get into our house or into our chicken coop, our food, stuff like that. The dogs, same thing. They, actually I was really proud of Zelly, our dog. She just chased a hawk and then she came right back. So we got our dogs for the livestock protection. If you have dogs though, you know how much of a responsibility they are. But we can clearly see how these animals are working into the kind of the whole ecosystem of our homestead. And the second point I want to make is, for us, self-sufficiency doesn't just mean what we single-handedly produce as a family. I love this term community sufficiency. And to us what that means is we have now sought out people in our community that specialize in certain areas. Like we have a place where we're getting our meat from, we have a place where we're getting our dairy from. And actually where we get our dairy, we're able to bargain and exchange with them chicken eggs because they don't have chicken eggs. So we're really able to have this mutually beneficial relationship where we produce one thing, they produce another thing, and we're able to exchange. And they're just good people. They're just good folks to have in your network and good people to be around. Which leads me to the next thing. If we were starting from scratch, we would focus on relationships. We moved out here, we had it all backwards. We really did. At least I did. I won't speak for Sarah, but I had it all backwards of like, we're gonna take back control, we're gonna stick it to the man, we're gonna raise everything and grow everything our own. And I think that's a very romantic ideal, but when it comes down to it, it's pretty far-fetched in my opinion. And so the thing that I wish I would have done better, and we are now doing it really well, but that is meet people in your area, meet people in your community, figure out who does what well, figure out how you can bring value to them. And it's amazing the type of people that you meet out in the country. They are some of the most generous, most selfless people that you will ever meet. I swear on that. When we moved in, we had people coming up to us, neighbors, and like by neighbors I mean people that live like half a mile away. We had people coming up and like just being like, hey, I have a tractor, I can help you with this project, or hey, I have this piece of equipment, if you need help I can help you here, or hey, here's, you know, some of the food from our garden, whatever. Unprovoked, without meeting them, people just went out of their way to help. And I think that is so cool, and that just comes back to this idea of community sufficiency. Is there are people in your network that you probably don't even know yet, people within your community, that if you meet them, they're going to be such a value add to your life, and you have a chance to be such a value add to their life as well. So focus on meeting the people around you, even if you don't have direct neighbors. You know, we have one neighbor that's a few hundred yards away from us, but that's the only other house we see. Focus on trying to meet the local people in your community, figure out how you can fit into that community sufficiency idea, and yeah, that would be one thing that I would go back and refocus on, is meeting people in your area. The next thing I would focus on would be the energy systems you have at your property. So what I mean by that is we heat our home primarily with wood. So that means every year we have to do this, we have to chop wood. And it's not always easy, as you can tell. So things like how you're heating your home, things like solar power, that's one thing that we have not invested hardly anything in. But going back, if we were to start from scratch, I think we would, just the dog, I think we would try and put more effort into more solar power devices, because you never know, when you lose power, you never know when that's going to be. Let's see if we can do this again. That wood is going to take a long time to dry out. So things like wood heating, things like electricity and solar power, things like your water system, how you are capturing water and reusing that throughout the property. These are things that besides the wood, things that we've kind of neglected so far, but that's going to be one of our focuses going forward, is trying to create more energy systems to, maybe get off grid more, or to be a little bit more self-sufficient. But things like wood collection and chopping wood is a lot of work, and it's very time consuming. So be patient, give yourself some grace when you're starting out thinking about these big energy systems. Not gonna lie, chopping wood is pretty fun though, so have at it. All right, and ooh, this might not work. The very last thing, I think, if you're starting from scratch, what I would focus on would be yourself. There's going to be challenges ahead. There's going to be frustrations. There's going to be probably long nights, sore bodies. Carving out time to do things that you enjoy outside of the homestead, I think, is super important. Taking the trips with your family, seeing friends, doing the hobbies that, even though they might not seem like they're pushing you forward, at least pushing your homestead forward, those hobbies that are going to rejuvenate you, to kind of give you more life, if you will. We love our coffees in the morning, our quiet time. That's really fun for us. Love being outside and going on walks and hikes and everything. It's super important. So don't neglect the personal time. And you're probably, if you're making this jump or you're already there, you probably enjoy a lot, if not all, the aspects of homesteading. But I think it's important too to have a life outside of your homestead and of your property. So that is 3 years worth of reflections on, if we were to start over, where we would prioritize things on our homestead, what projects we would do, what tasks we would tackle right away. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you have a very different opinion, let me know. I would love to hear kind of what people think about, and what other priorities they would have if they had to restart. And if you have been a veteran in the homesteading world, I would definitely love to hear your thoughts and your reflections, because we've only been doing this for 3 years, and we've learned a lot. We've come a long way, but I know that we still have much further to go, and so much more to learn. Endless amount of learning ahead. So thank you guys for watching the video. My name's Austin. This is Cypress and Sparrow Homestead. My wife Sarah and I and our little guy Gus, we're just out here trying to build a life, trying to love every day. And if you are in a position where you're thinking about buying a homestead, I would say do it, because it's great. It really is. A lot of challenges, a lot of frustrations, but it's worth it in the end. So thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.